he had a bag. We hung it. We went to the swap shop and bought a desk, threw it in the corner, and put in a payphone. So we were in business. We threw a demonstration, and we signed up 20 students out of that demonstration, and that's how we started.
All right, welcome, guys. I am Cody Garza, and I'm here with Grandmaster Garza, my dad, and we are going to have a little podcast here talking a little bit about the journey that Grandmaster Garza has gone on for the past 47 years and how he has developed his personal development curriculum that we have at Al Garza's Premier Martial Arts over the years. And so I'm super excited. This is a conversation that we've been wanting to have and record for a while, and so I'm super excited to be finally sitting down and doing this.
Glory, hallelujah. I'm excited too. And, I just pray that God gets all the glory and that we tell his story about how he's been the center of all this for so long. When you say 47 years, it's 47 years of being in business and 51 years of doing martial arts now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so...
Well, let me introduce you real quick, just in case there's anybody listening who doesn't know who you are. So we have a little bio that we read when we go do, different trainings around at different corporate events. So I'm just going to read that briefly here to kind of intro who we're talking to today and kind of why you should have a voice in this topic. So Al Garza and his wife, Kim, and their son, Cody, own and run Al Garza's Premier Martial Arts with 3 locations in League City, Dickinson, and Pearland. Al, who began his martial arts training at 16, holds black belts in 4 styles and emphasizes lifelong learning. He's certified as a police self-defense tactics instructor, ladies rape aggression defense instructor, John Maxwell speaker, trainer, coach, and 7 habits of highly effective people teacher. Al has served as Chief Grandmaster of Premier Martial Arts International, overseeing 200-plus schools worldwide, inspiring the organization in leadership, faith, and martial arts skills. Additionally, Al serves as on the TCOL, which is Texas Commission on Law Enforcement Advisory Board for College of the Mainland, and the League City Police Department Advisory Board. Al and Kim have been married for 45 years and have 3 children and 10 grandchildren. And your favorite way to start the day is by reading God's Word and sharing daily devotionals with your influencers. So super glad to be doing this.
Me too. I'm excited.
Yep. So why don't we just jump right in? So just kind of, as I said in the beginning, the goal here is to take everybody on this journey. So why don't we start at the very beginning of just how you even got into the martial arts and how that side of the martial arts journey started for you.
Okay. So as a youngster, I grew up in Dickinson, Texas. From the age of 11 to 16 was my before martial arts. And I loved sports, playing, I ran cross country and I did a lot of just yard, street ball, basketball, football, everything else. I just loved it. I was a very small person. I was 5 foot, less than 100 pounds at that time, and I played football in junior high and got to play B team. I got to actually be B team quarterback and got some action and loved it. Just thought I was going to be a professional football player one day, and that just didn't seem to be working out. And at the age of 16, just before, right around that time, I had cousins that were involved in the martial arts. Jesse Benavides and Rosie Benavides were my cousins, and they had 2 daughters, and they were all involved in martial arts. And so I would go and visit them and hear about their martial arts journey and going and watching them compete. They were young girls at the time. It was just, first it was Cynthia at that time. So Rosie, my cousin, introduced me to George Minshew, who was the owner of Black Belt Academies in Houston, at a tournament in Louisiana at the after party. And she just told him that I was interested in doing martial arts. And he said, guess what? I have a sale going on. So he told me about his special, and So I went back to school. I'm in a junior high at this. I'm a junior in high school at that time, and I went back to school. And a buddy named Jack Helton had just gotten him a brand new Pinto, and he got that for his birthday. And so he says, "Hey, I'll drive us there," because I told him about all that, and he says, "I'll drive us." So we started going to Telephone Road and Gulf Freeway. If you know where that's at, that's a pretty good little drive. So we started going there, and like I say, he would drive us there, and we started under George Minshew as the chief instructor, and a guy named Jimmy Tabaras was the instructor that was over the class, and lasted there for 3 months. But before I left there, 2 weeks into it, I went to my first tournament and competed. I had been well trained in my backyard, practicing everything I saw Bruce Lee do, and everything that I saw when I went to the tournament. So that was my training, but I went, and I just got beat up pretty bad. Yeah. Got beat up by some tall, big guys, and I was in the adult division at 16. That was at that time. That's the way that worked. And like I said, I lost, and then I lost again, and I lost again. And one day I was going to a tournament, and my mother caught me in the kitchen, and she asked me where I was going. And I said, "I'm going to a tournament." And she said, "Why do you go to those blankety-blank things? You never win a blankety-blank thing." So I was at the crossroads. And I'll tell you, many people get into that crossroads. And for me, fortunately, that was the day that I won. I won the tournament. I actually won. And it was a crossroads because I could have definitely given up right there and just believed what she said. But it didn't dawn on me to do that. Instead, I just got angry and took off and went. I'll show her, and I did. And she was an awesome mom. I don't mean to be negative about her because she adopted me. She took care of me and her 2 children, and we lost Ruben Garza, who adopted me. We had lost him early on in my relationship with them. And so I just owe her the world for everything that she did for me. So just moving forward, after I got a taste of winning, I learned how to train better and train harder and learned how to fight a lot of different people. Jesse Benavides, my cousin, was a coach. I moved after 3 months. I moved over to Galveston and started training in Galveston. And that's a great story because I just started training with some top world-class people that were going to become world champions. Ishmael Robles at that time was not a world champion. He became a national champion in point fighting, and then he became a world champion in boxing. And then just God started lining up world-class grandmasters, world-renowned people like Jun Rhee. Grandmaster Jun Rhee brought Taekwondo to the United States. I winded up training with him in 1984, and he became being our instructor. I was still under the tutelage of Grandmaster Robles, and Jun Rhee trained us both. When he came to the United States, he established himself in Texas and then in Washington, D.C., came back, reacquainted, made relationships here in Texas. And then I can go on and on about all the ones in the future, several more people who brought the arts to the United States. And so God lined that up. They were divine meetings because they were not just martial arts relationships. They were God-centered relationships. Most of them were.
Yeah. So at what point did you decide to open up your own facility? I know you said you started with Houston and went to Galveston. And then
in 73 is when I started martial arts, and then in 76 is when I decided to open a school. I had an experience where I moved in with my brother-in-law and my sister, Angie and Ruben Herrera, and I spent 2 years living with them in Lamarck, Texas. And Ruben Herrera had been in the Air Force, and he started doing martial arts there. And when he got out, he during those 2 years we would party, and we would after the parties or during the parties we would dream about opening a school together, and we talked about opening a school, And eventually we decided to open together in Dickinson. And I think that's a cool story because he put up $500, I put up $500. So with $1,000, let me just say also, he was working at the time Carbide as an operator, and I was working at Amoco as an operator. So we both had shift work jobs. And so we put up our $500 each, and we rented a 800 square foot facility here in Dickinson over by the Dairy Queen in Dickinson. If you know where Dickinson is, you know where Dairy Queen is, right? So it was $320 rent, and they wanted 2 months worth. So we paid $640. He had a bag. We hung it. We went to the swap shop and bought a desk, threw it in the corner, and put in a payphone. So we were in business. We threw a demonstration, and we signed up 20 students out of that demonstration, and that's how we started. And they were paying about $20 a month.
Yeah.
And that's how it started out. And, I thought up to that point, I thought I had enough confidence to teach kids, because I was a shy person, and I was just very shy. And I envisioned teaching a bunch of kids, and I was going to teach them character. I was going to make champions out of them and take them to tournaments. And that was my goal. That was my whole vision, was to get them off the streets of Dickinson, or just to give them a place to come where they could learn how to be champions and again, teach them character. And my first students turned out to be adult private students that were like, one of them was he owned his own insurance agency. His name is Jerry Harriman, and he wound up being pretty significant in an action that he took in my life. And had some other guys that were contractors. Another one was a assistant. He was the vice president of savings and loans, and all these guys just spoke life into me. I mean, they just taught me about business. They taught me about, just the character, just leadership, and just a lot of things that just really blew my socks off.
How old are you at this point?
At this point, I'm 20 years old.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm 20 years old, and I started when I was 16, the martial arts. So I was a brown belt. Everything that could point to failure was, to start off a business with a brown belt martial arts. At that time, in our system, it was the belt before black belt, and it was an instructor level. Mm-hmm. So I was qualified in that respect. My brother-in-law was also a brown belt. We had no college. He had more experience in life because he's already gone to the Air Force, and he was already done with that. And for me, it was just, like I said, I had a job, and I just started doing martial arts for about 3 years, a little over 3 years, and so I got in there, and it was amazing to meet the people and the relationships that I would meet, and to see how those relationships, there was a give and take. I mean, I would give them all my heart and train them in the martial arts, and they would insist in giving back their knowledge, their experience, their leadership, and then they would call me on things whenever I wasn't being a good leader, or when I wasn't being a good person. And this was before I found the Lord. I mean, I knew of God, and I just had a pretty rough upbringing before that. Made a lot of crazy mistakes, and but in opening that school, I was in that school for from 76 to 79, and a guy named Charlie Goodson came in one day the day that I resigned from Amoco Oil. I resigned from Amoco Oil that day after working the school and working there at the same time for 2 years. And I finally convinced my wife, Kim, we were married by then, and I convinced her to let me quit and do full-time martial arts. So the day my final day, I just resigned. I just left there, and I come to the school, and I'm gonna carpet the school because we had tile floors, and it was So I decided to carpet it. So I just come back from getting an estimate on what it was going to take. I pulled up, and Charlie Goodson pulls up, and he had inquired about martial arts before, but he had not started, and he had a background in martial arts as a intermediate rank or something. And so he pulls up, and I just was, transparent, bubbling over, excited that I'd just, come into doing it full time. And so I told him what I was doing and everything, and he says, "I'll tell you what, I'll barter with you." He says, "I'll take care of the carpet." He says, "I have a contracting company, and I'll trade you that for martial arts." And I said, "Okay." So I gave him a lifetime membership for $360 something worth of carpet.
Heck of a deal.
Tell me. I mean, we've come a long way, right? Yeah. So anyway, he just turned out to be so significant in my life. He was a believer, and he would speak life into me. He would speak, a word into me. But he knew that I had a dream to build a school, and he knew I had that dream. And so one day he came and he says, right now things are really hard. And he says, I'll make a deal with you. He says, I'll get you a loan. He says, and I'll build you your school. And I was dreaming big. To me, it was 800 square feet that I had right there. So I was going 2.5 times. I was dreaming 2,000 square feet. And so when it came out to fruition, all the personal development stuff that I was learning was things like, sometimes when you commit to a goal, and when it comes in abundance. It comes greater than what you ask for. God gives you more. And so that is exactly what happened. When he built the school, he built a 4,000 square foot facility. I had a dream about all the different bags, how many bags and how many speed bags and double-end bags and all the things that I wanted to be in it. And it all came in double. Everything was 2 times or more. And like I said, he set that up. And then he said that would help him because the economy was tough right there for them in that business. And so what I did was I paid a little bit above the cost of the loan monthly, and did that up to a point. Then he got into a situation where he asked for a certain amount of money, and that I could get out from under it. And so I wound up doing that. And so boom, there we were in our own business. This was pre-kids, right? We were in that location, and then eventually we.
And this is Holly Street back here, right?
Yeah, it was on Holly Street. We moved over, and it was just a couple of blocks away from our first location, and it was on the back street, and had a nice yard beside it. Our story continues on how we grew up around there, because just down the road from there is where my home was, where I grew up at. And
I was actually just telling some of that story to my wife, Kendra, the other day, and just memories that I have of that school. It was kind of already closed down by the time I started remembering, but I remember going there to get things, and not a great memory, but I remember getting stung by wasps in there, because I think after we moved out and it was more of a storage place, it kind of got some wasps in there. But I do remember the facility, and obviously I've seen it now because the building still stands, but we just don't have it anymore.
Right.
But I've heard the story many times about that place. So
yeah, we built a lot of champions. I mean, I trained a lot of champions that I brought from scratch up into point fighting, into forms and weapons, and into kickboxing. And just a lot of that, as well as champions that I made relationships with, who came and always would come by when they came into the area, and they would train at our school. They would train at Grandmaster Robles' school in Galveston, and they'd come to my school. And we just had great training all the time. I got to train, a world champion kickboxer for a rematch, and he won his rematch. And this guy's named Cliff Thomas. And so I got such great memories about all those times. It was just, like I said, it was the beginning. It was within the first, from 79 to 91.
Right.
That's
whenever y'all moved over.
That's when we moved from there to open in League City.
Awesome. Let's bring it back to the kind of personal development now. So that's an awesome story of how you got started in the martial arts. So at what point on that journey did you start being exposed more to the personal development? Because obviously I think your goals in the beginning were more the the fighting side of it, the competitive side of it, and building champions.
Right.
When did that kind of start getting influenced by some of these people you were speaking about?
Yeah, I was learning the martial arts from some great people, and one of my students, Jerry Harriman, was a private student, the one who owned the insurance company. He brought me. Most people don't know what they are, but 45s were little records disc, and it was a whole album of 45s, and it was Earl Nightingale Lead the Field series was what it was called, and I just loved it, man. I mean, it was just so much positivity, but it was mostly about mind setting. It was about having the right attitude, and it was about goal setting, and then that introduced me to the personal development field, and I was just always attracted to the ones who had really great quotes that were faith based, or they had scriptures that were faith based. I was Zig Ziglar. He says you can get anything out of life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want, and it was always selfless things. It was servanthood, and it was things like that that were just really very biblical as well. At that time, I wasn't really well versed in the Bible, but I was attracted to that, and so that was 77 when I got that, and I spent time listening to those over and over and over. I would wake up early and I'd crank them up, trying to wake Kim up so she would catch some of that stuff too, because it was just a lot on positive mental attitude. It was just a lot on just the acronym of GEL. Relational, that GEL just made me fall in love with acronyms because they're so rich in wisdom, and I find that a lot of the leaders that I follow and have followed over the years had their own personal vocabulary of acronyms, and the word GEL is GEL, like you're gelling. So that is being a good finder is the G, and the E is expect the best, and the L is loyalty. And I like thinking of loyalty and love, as that L. And so, again, as being that good finder, I mean, even in the midst of the hardest times, you've got that silver lining. You've got that. And then I was in the future to learn things like about the optimist and the pessimist twins and things like that I'd like to talk to y'all about at some point.
I remember that story very well. You used to tell us all the time as kids.
Yeah. Pony in there somewhere. Yeah, so I think those things are they have a little humor to them, but they're white wisdom, And I just sometimes when I share it with an audience, I mean, I started right away. The way I learned was by teaching. So when I learned something from someone, I would teach it to someone, whether it was martial arts or whether it was quotes or some principle of leadership, principle of character, whatever it might be, scripture. That's how I learned it, is by sharing it. And my audience was my students and my family growing up, as the family that was around, which I had my 3 children. Cody is my youngest of 3. And it was just a continuous cycle. And even before, I became a 2020, I guess. No, it was 2015 or so. I met John Maxwell, and he uses the acronym of ACT, A-C-T. And that's when you learn something, look in the mirror, apply it to yourself. How does it apply to you? Mm-hmm. The C, that's the A. The C is what needs to change in order for this to be applied. And now who can I teach it to? And that's looking out the window, looking out the door to see who you're going to go bless, who you're going to help. You're not trying to knock somebody over the head with it. You're trying to bless somebody with it. And that was the spirit that I learned it in, and learned it from just applying it right off. That was the way I learned. I had a high school education, and I had a couple of years of working at Amoco Oil, which that was just a blessing in itself for me to have that. But the acronyms and the acrostics moving forward from there, just loved the Earl Nightingale Lead the Field series. And when I look back on my life, I was able to rise above. I mean, God gets the glory, and he gave me the direction. He gave me the context, gave me the relationships, But all the relationships that I had, like I said, were God-centered relationships predominantly. They would ask me to pray at their seminars. They would ask me to pray at their tournaments. When we threw our first tournament, we opened with a word of prayer, and that was even before I was a born-again believer. But I had the heart for God at that time, and that caught on, and I got, recognized for bringing God to the prayer to the tournaments at that time. And I don't know that they're all doing that now, but this was 1978.
78. So Earl Nightingale, what would you say would be the next one after that? Was it the 7 Habits, or was there something?
Well, Earl Nightingale, introduced me to that field of people. Like I mentioned, the ones that were speaking the word and faith-based, where I was real attracted to. Zig Ziglar was one of those. I got so deep into following him for a while there that I got in trouble. I was like talking to Kim about one of the things he was teaching. I was quoting him, and she was like, "You sound like Zig Ziglar." It wasn't a loving way of saying that. It wasn't like, "You sound like," in a loving way. It was more like I was frustrating her, And so, we had moments like that in those early days. And but it was just, even today, I still know that I'm driven by a lot of the things that I heard him say. He, like I said, he said, you can't get everything, you can't do everything, but with a positive mental attitude, but you can do everything better than a negative attitude. And there's just so many good things that came out of that. That led to Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn was an amazing guy. He's gone to be with the Lord, and the thing I learned about him was some things about seasons. Seasons come and seasons go, and there are 4 seasons, and he uses the analogy of the 4 seasons, but then he applies it to how winters can be like your hard times. Mm-hmm. And don't lose hope, because winters are always followed by the spring, and spring is opportunity time, and that goes on, and then spring's followed by summers. But look out, because summers can get hot. You got to protect. You have to protect your kids. You got to protect. He uses it as analogies for moving in and out of the seasons, the actual planting of harvesting and all of that, and then you have the fall, which is your harvest time. Mm-hmm. And if you were lazy in the spring, don't expect a harvest in the fall. And so those are the kind of wisdoms that I feel like I got, and I tried to live them. I tried to apply them. I tried to teach them, and tried to pass them on. That led to Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins, he taught me the idea of power questions. And when you look in our 7 habits, the power questions that came from that, because the question, people think about questions like in kindergarten, we're told there's no, all questions are good, or that, there's nothing wrong.
No such thing as a bad question.
Yeah, no such thing as a bad question. Well, that's really not totally true. At that time, I think it's true when they're applying it. But when you grow up and you realize, people ask questions sometimes because they're trying to get out of something, or they're whining about something. But a power question is one that it engages your brain and helps you to come up with an answer. And an answer is going to be an answer that's going to help you be productive, to do something, to accomplish something. And I felt like that was really important, as well as he taught mindset, focus, and he sponsored a seminar in Houston, and Kim and I went to it, and afterwards they did the fire walk. Mm. So we walked on hot coals, and that was my first time to get to do that. And you walked on these hot coals, and you did it barefooted, and you went cool moss, and I don't even remember what that meant, but I just remember saying that and walking, and you kind of walk, it's power walking fast. You go over it, and it's amazing. I winded up doing it again in the future, this was 83, and in the future, 97, I went to California and trained with Ernie Reyes, and that was an impactful event as well. And they did the firewalk after their master's test, and so we did it. I did it there as well. It was different. That one was a silent deal where you just kind of walked over it with silence, and so that again was Tony Robbins, and there were more that that I still go back and in preparing for this. When I found out we were going to do this, I decided I wanted to go back and listen to some of the guys, and it's just so fresh and so new, and it's so timeless and universal. It's still true, and it's the principles are timeless and universal. They're not outdated. You know, the stories might be outdated, but the principles is what I hear and what I see.
Timeless and universal.
Yeah.
Can you think of an example of like a weak question versus a power question?
Why? Why do you want me to do that? It's not just not just the word, but it's the emotion behind it. It's how it's said. You know. Again, it helped me, and I don't know that I don't ever ask weak questions, but I know that I ask power questions. When I ask a question, I'm asking a question that's going to get me an answer. It's going to bless that person. It's going to bless me.
Yes, sir.
If I'm asking it.
So that was 83.
Yeah, so that was still about 10 years before Stephen Covey, but I'll just bounce up to Stephen Covey. Mm-hmm. I brought in a guy, and I was trying to find his name, and I have not been able to find it. If you are listening to that and you are that guy, I'd love to talk to you about it. But I had him come in. He was a consultant, and he came into my Lake City school, and we only had the Lake City school at that time. And he came and went through our whole operation, did everything that he did to be a consultant. And at the end of it, he had given us back the feedback of everything, and I walked him out to his car. He was leaving, and he just, like in passing, he just reached into the back seat of his car. He says, "I think you'll like this book." And it was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And so I got the book, and I started reading it, and I was about to have a retreat with our black belts, and we were doing that in Friendswood at a camp that was over there. And so I bought everybody one of the books, and we had we broke into 7 groups, and I just had them all read it over the camp during the camp, and then we just all presented on it, and then we voted to make them be a part of our culture, and everybody liked it. So from that point on, I just got excited about it, started following him, and went and got certified to teach it, and went and heard him speak several times, and started, like I said, started applying it. I moved forward from there. In 2002, we had our first master's test where we tested our first 3 guys to master, and I started teaching those 7 habits to them, to the students there, and that's when we got that. And even today, we still try to get those. Again, they're timeless and universal, and a lot of the people that are doing things today on leadership, their roots come from that. They'll refer to a lot of the same principles, and so that was pretty powerful. I would go to my to my pastors, and ask them where I could find principles that were coming out of the 7 habits. Where would I find them in the Bible? And they would give me scripture, and so I just gradually just kept purging it through the Bible. And I love the acronym for Bible. It's basic instruction before leaving Earth. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to all have that basic instruction. So that was our process there. The actual first time that I taught the 7 habits to an audience, I had wanted to do a boot camp for many years, and I just dreamed about it, and then finally I decided I had the formula for it. I was going to do a 7-week boot camp, and it was going to be 7 weeks, and I was going to teach one habit every week, and it was going to be from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Monday through Friday, and it was going to be 7 weeks before Thanksgiving, because I was going to teach that boot camp. They were going to be blessed, and we were going to have a lot to be thankful for by Thanksgiving, because they would have 7 weeks of training.
Mm-hmm.
So I set it all up. I did it, and the Monday before the Wednesday of kickoff, I left the school and I looked at the list, and I had like 15 people signed up. And so then I fast forward Wednesday, I had kickoff that morning, 5 a.m., kicked off, and at the end of it, we had 85 people show up.
Wow.
And so out of that 85 people, about 65 of them had 100% attendance. Some of them hit and miss, and some of them quit. But I went through that, and God just downloaded everything I needed. He gave me music. He gave me scripture. He gave me wisdom to follow, to pass it on. And so I still have students that I run into who were involved in those boot camps. And I actually had people asking me recently if I'm going to do any more, because they're wanting to do some. So I've decided to do some more. But I did boot camps like that for once a year for several years, and then I did some more. I think I watered it down a little bit too much. I kind of got burned out, and so I set it aside. But right now I'm excited to do some more. But there was a lot of students that came through that, a lot of families that came through it.
Yeah.
And,
I know one thing with those 7 habits, I remember several of your students who have come up through the black belt testing and learning them from you have gone off to college and taken different courses than college for business management or whatever, and mentioned that they did the 7 habits there, and that they were able to really kill that class super easy because of the training through here.
Yeah, in fact, Master Ferrero, who we're going to be going Thursday and training the police cadets at the University of Texas law enforcement over in Austin. Well, he also, in his training in law enforcement, went through the 7 habits in College of the Mainland, and then several others. Yeah, so it's just it's very valuable. It's very valuable to me. I mean, progress is what I measure. I don't always look for perfection. There are definitely holy moments that are perfect, but more than not, it's progress, and I see a lot of application in my life in those over the years.
Yeah, I think one awesome thing is just the way you've always been very dedicated to giving God all the glory. So no matter what titles you get and positions you get, you're always, people try to talk about you, you're always talking about God. You're always pushing off the credit to Him, and I think that's something honorable and super cool.
Well, it's exactly what my heart is, because there's just no way, if I'd have said no, Lord, when I said yes, Lord, and accepted Him, there's just no way it would be anything like it is right now. And, that's always been amazing. I can't take credit for it, because it's like divine arrangements in the relationships. It's like divine timing. My beginning was the way it was. And, God just took a little guy, a little bit, and just turned it into something bigger and big. And I don't ever want to steal any of His thunder. I want Him to get the glory. And I want others to see that and feel that as well. I don't want them thinking that they can go do martial arts and become some great leader and get all these promotions and all these things and take all the glory, for themselves. I think, there's a lot of successful people, but I don't know that they impact the people like I've been allowed to do that. I mean, I've just, first as a instructor of one school, and then owning 3, and then being promoted or asked to be the Grandmaster of Premier Martial Arts International, and that that was from 2005 till right now. That relationship is different than it was, but it was an amazing relationship for so many years, and after a relationship with Jamil Tarkani from Germany, who I met, Remy Presses, the founder of Modern Arnis, who brought Arnis and the Filipino art to the United States, was our teacher. And I had a great relationship with him, and God was in the center of it. He would always call on me to pray at the seminars, and I prayed. He would call me when he needed prayer, and we just had this great relationship. After 25 years of Jamel coming and visiting us here in Dickinson and sitting at Starbucks and solving all the problems of the world, he asked me one day to be the Grandmaster of his organization in Germany. And that's just been a great thing, too. And just, like as I said, I can't take any credit for it. Sometimes I pinch myself to make sure I'm not dreaming because, God just always allowed me to become a leader of an organization or of groups and to be able to speak into the group. And, if I'm going to teach martial arts, I'm going to teach about faith. And if I'm going to teach leadership, I'm going to teach about faith. And it's just the way our culture has thrived and been great. And we've had some hard times. I mean, when we go through those hard times, I think of all the scriptures and the core scriptures. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I like to change that as we can do that, all things through Christ who strengthens us. And, all things work together for the good for those who love the Lord and are called to his purpose. I mean, I believe that, and I apply it. I don't give up, don't quit. And, if people get that from this and they realize they can do the same thing, read that same book, that Bible, commit that. My mentors, when I first started, they would all say, like June Reed would say, take 20 minutes in the morning to think some great positive thoughts, to write and to read something positive. Well, that 20 minutes for me turned into 3 hours. I mean, it just, I would do 2 to 3 hours of reading the Bible and doing the devotionals and doing the things that I do in the morning and setting goals and writing and doing things like that. And it's just wonderful. I mean, I think if you're having a challenge in your life, then I think consider, let's sit down and talk. Just share some of the things that have worked for us. And I say us because it worked for me and my family and for our AGPMA family, right? It's working.
Yes, sir. So I think one thing you mentioned in the very beginning that to start wrapping this up, the acronym of ACT, I feel like was just super powerful throughout your entire life, even though you didn't know it whenever you first started this journey. But just that concept of anything that you were currently studying or reading or hearing that was impacting your life, you were always teaching it. You were always sharing it with the community here. And I think that's shown to be a huge blessing on the business, the way you've done that for sure.
Yeah, I think the things that I learned about relationships and how important it is, I would say to y'all, to my students, to my family, I would say, that there are 3 keys to success are relationships. But what God has me do in those mornings when I'm praying and when I'm thinking about it and meditating on his word, he just taught me the meaning of that. And, it's like, yes, that first relationship is a relationship with Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. That's that first relationship. Second is the relationship with all mankind, is to have love for all mankind. And then the relationship with yourself. You got to have an interpersonal relationship. And you need, the commandment is love thy neighbor, love yourself as your neighbor, love your neighbor as yourself. And so that was the meaning that became the meaning. So when I say it, I'm thinking like that. I'm not just saying. So like I said, sometimes when people hear it, they kind of laugh and they it's humorous, and they give you feedback on it. But that's the meaning of it to me, and it's so true.
It's good. So I think going forward, our game plan for this podcast time that we do is to kind of dive into each of these individual segments of personal development that you've been able to implement here and kind of do a deep dive and kind of have you teach a little bit more and a little deeper on 7 habits or the some of the things you mentioned earlier about Tony Robbins or Earl Nightingale. So looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to it too. Give me some feedback, and if I can be of any help, if anybody needs some help, we're here to help. We want to make a difference in this community.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, guys, thank you all for tuning in, and be on the lookout for future podcast episodes. Like I said, where we'll do some deep dives into some of these topics that Grandmaster Garza has gone into. So we will see you guys at the next one. Bye.